There's a moment right before you fall asleep, a thin, flickering breath where the world loosens its grip and your mind drifts sideways. Most people slip through it without noticing, but near death experiencers, they get caught in that space, held there, suspended, balanced between waking and dream, between here and whatever waits beyond. In that in between, strange things happen. Time folds, rooms shift, people appear who aren't alive anymore, but definitely aren't gone. Tonight, we explore the slippage, the moments when experiencers drift into a world that isn't supposed to overlap with this one. I'm Candy, and this is Half Haunted Chronicles. After a near death experience, or NDE, sleep becomes strange, not nightmares, not insomnia, something more like visiting. Experiencers report doors that open in dreams and stay open when they wake, waking up in someone else's memories, hearing conversations between people who aren't alive, feeling their spirit leave their body before their body is asleep. These aren't hallucinations, they're not dreams, they're crossings, moments where something inside the experiencer recognizes the road back to the light and steps onto it just for a moment before returning. Tonight's stories all begin the same way. A woman named Sarah began having episodes just before sleep where she felt herself step out of her body, not float, not drift. She described it like stepping through a curtain into another version of her life. Same house, same furniture, but everything slightly softer, brighter, and quieter. One night, she woke up in that in-between place and saw her grandmother, dead for 15 years, sitting calmly on her sofa. Her grandmother said, "You're dreaming too close to the edge." Sarah blinked and she was back in her bed. She said that place wasn't the afterlife, it was the doorway to it. The time loop in the kitchen. A man named Julian survived a motorcycle crash. Months later, he started experiencing a phenomenon called the time ripple. He would be washing dishes, suddenly reach for a towel, and suddenly he'd be back 2 seconds earlier, washing the same cup, hearing the same drip of the faucet, and feeling the same heartbeat in his chest. Sometimes it happened twice, sometimes 3 times. The longest loop lasted nearly 15 seconds before releasing him. Doctors blamed trauma, but Julian insisted it felt like I stepped out of time and came back in the wrong place. The loops disappeared after a year, but he remembers each one as clearly as the day it happened. The night visitor, who was still asleep. A woman named Nora had an NDE at 13. For years afterward, every time she drifted towards sleep, her younger brother, who had died when she was a baby, would appear at the foot of her bed, not as a ghost, not as an adult spirit. As a child, maybe 3 years old, eyes bright, face full of recognition, he never spoke, but he watched her with a look as she described as, "It's like seeing someone you waited lifetimes to meet." One night, Nora saw him and whispered, "Are you dreaming of me, or am I dreaming of you?" He smiled, tilted his head, and vanished. Years later, she had a second near-death experience, and he was the first person she saw. The man who slipped into the wrong memory. A minister named Harold had a cardiac arrest at 62 and returned with strange dreams. But these weren't different. He didn't dream his own life. He dreamed other people's. One night, he fell asleep in his armchair and woke, in the dream, sitting on a dusty porch in a town he didn't recognize. A woman in a sundress rocked in a wooden chair beside him. She turned to him and said, "You don't belong in this one." When he jolted awake, he had splinters in the palm from a porch he had never touched. Harold came to believe he wasn't dreaming memories. He was dream walking into other people's lives. He said, "When you've died once, dreaming becomes another doorway." The girl who spoke in two voices. A 16-year-old named Lydia survived a near-death experience after an asthma attack. Afterward, she began experiencing something her family called the doubling. Right before sleep, her voice would change, not deeper, not demonic, just different, older, calmer, and wiser. Her mother once heard her whisper, "You're doing well. I'll be close." But when asked about it the next morning, Lydia had no memory of speaking. She only remembered standing somewhere bright and not being allowed to stay. Her family wasn't sure whether the second voice belonged to a visitor or to the version of Lydia that stayed on the other side for a moment too long. Here are 3 creepy facts to haunt your day. Many NDE survivors develop sudden, vivid precognitive dreams that accurately predict small future events. Some returnees say they can't enter cemeteries without feeling physical pressure or hearing whispers. A few experiencers report time slips, moments where they see seconds or minutes into the future. Near death doesn't just change how you see the world, it changes where you stand in it. People who have died and come back walk closer to the boundary than the rest of us. They drift, they slip, they see the seams, they hear the corners of reality flex in ways we can't. They dream with one foot still on the other side, and maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's the truth. The world isn't solid. It never was. We just move through it as if it is. But the return, they've walked in the in between. And once you've done that, once you've stood between walking and wonder, you never fully come back. Tonight, we explored the dreamlike crossings experienced by those who survived death and slippages, the echoes, the doorways. But next time, we venture into territory even more mysterious. What happens when experiencers start receiving messages, clear, direct, and sometimes urgent, from the other side? Until then, stay curious and always, always stay haunted.